Let me get myself set here. I'm watching. There's a battle going on against Bobby Kennedy right now in Health and Human Services. And if you're not paying attention to it, there's about 1,000 people in that organization that are demanding that he be fired immediately. And I mean, I want all of them people to be fired, right? All those people. So first of all, I want to just say thanks to everybody for being here, and thanks for the invite and the fight that we have. You know, he just talked about these legal battles that we are involved in with this whole issue. We go all the way to the Supreme Court. The nonprofit that I am the chairman of, America's Future, it's the oldest nonprofit in the United States of America. It actually was created before World War II, before they even had 501c3s, and then it was recreated in 1946. But we've won 10. We've gone as an amici, they call it, like we sidle up to what we believe are attacks against all of our rights. And we've won like the last 10 at the Supreme Court, and one of those was at an appeals court. So we have a really good track record of fighting for our rights, right? So there's so many things that I like to talk about, and I know this is a big Second Amendment thing here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Second Amendment and what it means, but what I really want you to understand is that this is like, we're in a war right now. We are in a war in the United States of America, and all these, and it's good versus evil. And for me, when I go around this country, and I go around this country a lot, and I've been going around this country since I got uncoiled from everything that I faced and my family faced, because I could see it. You know, I talk about, and sometimes I come up on these stages, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about, like even today, but I wrote some notes on the way over here about not the Second Amendment, but about the First Amendment and another amendment that most people have no idea about. And that's the one that follows the Second Amendment. For all your math majors, that would be 3, right? The Third Amendment, right? So you're all kind of going, what's the Third Amendment, right? It's like, whoa. Well, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why the founders did what they did. But I want to spend a few minutes, and I do talk like I never want to be invited back, okay? Because I am so sick, and I know that there's political people in here and the politicians. You know, we are in a mess in this country right now. It is a mess. I love this beautiful country, but it is a mess. When somebody talks about $33 trillion in debt and all this debt, for most Americans it goes right over their heads. Because you know what people care about? They care about whether or not they can fill up their gas tank. Right? Then $33 trillion, that's just like, what the heck is that? Right? All these things that we are seeing being exposed overseas, right? Right here at home, all the corruption that we're seeing exposed in our own government. I mean, I met Elon Musk. I met him a number of years ago. And when they started to dig into all this stuff, right, with the Doge, right, all this Doge stuff, you know, USAID, right, is one of the acronyms, right? The depth of corruption. But this is not corruption like just because they're greedy people. This is a good versus evil time in this country. So we can stand here and we can say we have different formations or different variations of a war going on right now. It's intellectual, it's emotional, it is physical, right? I'm talking about right here at home before I touch on maybe a couple of things about what's happening overseas. But it is definitely spiritual. And I was talking with some of the people that are running for office here, whether they stayed around or not. You know, general elections for President of the United States, the last 10 elections for President of the United States of America, we averaged 67% turnout for voting for President of the United States. So that's more than 30% of the American people that were registered to vote, could vote, and decided not to vote. 30%, over 30%, last 10 presidential elections, to include this last one, even though in this last one in 2024, Trump won, he won a mandate, right? He won a big mandate. But the election, the turnout was still below 70%. It was below 70%. I guarantee you, in these elections that are coming up in all these different, counties in the state level that are off the year of the presidential election, because a presidential election draws more people into the elections, because people care, right? They want to vote for the big guy, right? So these school board elections, these city council elections, right? Do not take for granted that your vote doesn't count. Now, maybe the people in this hall here, I'm preaching to the choir. And I come in as a guy, and I'm going to pop off. I'm going to pop out, right? I'm going to leave here. But I'm going to leave you with at least one message, because sometimes that's all it takes is one person. It takes one person here. And in the couple hours that I've been here, I've met some of you who have come up to me and said, hey, I heard you, or this is what I'm doing. This is how I am serving my community. This is how I'm serving my community or my town right now. I'm fighting in the school board. There's a couple of people here, I think it's Madison County, if I'm not wrong, that ran for school board. I mean, did you ever think in this country, and as I gauge this audience, I'm in the sort of the latter era of my life, right? So maybe we're average age in here, maybe 50 years old, because there's some young people in here too. So maybe we're 50, 55 years old. I'm past that. And I'm telling you, I never even in my lifetime, especially as a kid growing up, my family is a family of military service from both of my grandfathers, my father, my brothers, my son is still serving. So that's all we ever did was serve in the military. That was our thing. My grandfather, who served in World War I and World War II, one of them, and World War II, is from Newport, Tennessee. Right, anybody from Newport, Tennessee? Yeah. I mean, he was about as hick as you get. I mean, talk about, and a good man, and a tough guy. And so, service, responsibility. We did not have a country. We didn't have a country when this country was founded. So how did people get together in places like Boston or down in South Carolina or North Carolina or Virginia? How did they get together at that time? Because they didn't have these things, right? They didn't have these things. They didn't have an ability to do that, right? They didn't have the newspapers, the big newspapers, or the TV. How did they get together? How did a group of primarily men, but there's a lot of women that were part of it, because when you think about another group that I'm very familiar with, which is called the Loyal Nine. I was talking about the Loyal Nine the other day. They're the original Sons of Liberty, and now in Congress they're called the Freedom Caucus, right? People that came together who said, enough is enough, right? And actually, the real true test at that time, this is no country, only colonies, the British rule. So the original group of guys that got together, they got together because they didn't like the Stamp Act. They didn't like the Stamp Act, okay, that the British came in and they were basically going to charge us a bunch of money, taxes, right, for what it is that we needed, what they needed. And they said, enough of this. We're done. We're done. We want to decide what we want to do. How did they ever get together? Because without a country at that time, no country, a revolution, George Washington, Madison, Jefferson, Hancock, Revere. I mean, so many others, right? Those are the big names, but so many others that were killed fighting for this country that wasn't a country, had no constitution, had nothing, okay? So the first thing, when they finally decided that they were going to form something, right? They were going to take something and they were going to form a document. They were going to have a document that's called a constitution or a declaration. What they decided to do, and this is really fascinating because these are the kinds of things that I study. You know, I've read all of the Federalist Papers. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I stand there and I study things because this is what I like to do. I come from a large Irish Catholic family, generally grew up in the Northeast. My mom and dad, both deceased, both beautiful people. And like I said, our family is a family of service, right? And we were taught the golden rule by my dad, you know, treat others like you like to be treated. And we were taught to be lifelong learners by my mom. Don't stop learning. I don't care if you, whatever you're going to do with it, you know, go get yourself a college degree, go get yourself an education. You can stick it in your back pocket if you want. If you don't want to use it, that's on you, but you're going to get it, okay? And you're getting an education in these kinds of forms. This country is getting an education right now in service and sacrifice, because if you don't decide to serve as a citizen of this country, if you don't stand up today, tomorrow, the next day, as we go through these next couple of years, because one man cannot do it. You cannot control what Donald Trump is going to do today. You cannot control what is happening in Washington, D.C., but you can take control of what is happening in your life today. You can take control of what you're doing right here, right now, in your county, in your town, whether you're going to decide to serve, whether you're going to decide to stand up for your country. You know that the First Amendment, most people think First Amendment, right? The freedom to be able to do what I'm doing right now, right? Get up and speak. Actually, the First Amendment has 5 parts. 5 parts in the First Amendment, and we are exercising every single one of them right here, right now. Why? Because what did we do when we opened up today? We opened up with a prayer, right? That's the very first part of the First Amendment. Not speaking freely. So when you think about what this country was founded upon, right? And I've written a lot about this. Our country was founded upon a set of Judeo-Christian principles and values in this country. And I've studied this intensely. So when the founders got together, it wasn't some 3-day weekend that they're going to go, okay, we're going to write this document. You know, we're going to declare our independence. We're going to write a constitution. We're going to come up with a Bill of Rights. Do you know that the Bill of Rights is essentially derived from the 10 Commandments? Most people don't know that. Most people don't know that the Constitution of the United States of America, like 75 to 80%, and historians have argued about the inches there, but it's about 75 to 80% of our Constitution is derived from the Bible. From the Bible. Because that's the fulfillment of who we are as a nation. They made these tough decisions. They argued the First Amendment for a long time, and you can read about it in various Federalist Papers, right? Federalist Paper 3, 42, 43, where guys like Madison and Jefferson argued about the very First Amendment. And basically, I'll tick them off, right? The First Amendment is establishment of religion, then it's freedom of speech. So they argued about religion first to make sure that we were a godly country. This country has forgotten about God. Now, that's a general statement, but I'm a general, all right? So we have got to figure out how do we bring the spirituality of what our country is and why it was created. Because the enemy, the adversaries that we face, it's evil. It is evil. It is godless. When you talk about communism or socialism, I mean, I'm standing up here today even mentioning those words, and we're kind of going, people in this country, they are now starting to wake up to what it is, right? We never talked like this. We never talked about these kinds of issues when I was a kid growing up, right? 60s, 70s, 80s. We never talked like that. In fact, we used to hide under our desks waiting for a nuclear attack, right? We never talked about, we would joke about, we'd call some kid a commie, right? That would be like a nickname we'd give him if we didn't like him. But now it's real. The infiltration into our country is the single greatest threat that we face. It is not what's happening in Venezuela. It is not what's happening over in China. It is not what's happening in the Ukraine. Those threats are not existential to our country. Our country's existential threat is right here at home. And Donald Trump realizes that. President Trump realizes that. He knows it in spades. Yeah. Thank God we have him. You know that man, if he didn't win this election, I think it was the 26th of November, right, was his sentencing date. His sentencing date was the 26th of November. So if he lost, he'd be in prison right now for the rest of his life. Okay? That's still not a yoke that's been taken off of his neck yet. Okay, that still exists. That judge, Marchant, out of New York, has another date set in basically in late January. I think it's either late January or early February 2029. Seriously. These people will not relent. They will not give up. Okay, we have to stand our ground. I know what I went through, and I could give you a big old sob story, you know, about persecution and whatever. No. Like I tell people, and I'm from a very tough Irish family. My old man was he was a sergeant in World War II, and he was a staff sergeant and sergeant first class in the Korean War. He went over there for 2.5 years and fought them, right? And I know, and I can see what is happening to our country. So the First Amendment, establishment of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press. I don't know if we have any press in here, right? Fake news, like Trump says, right? The freedom to assemble and the right to petition our government, which is essentially what you're here about. The right to be able to petition our government to do different things, right? I mean, we don't understand who we are or what it is that we are about. And so when we go out, when you leave here and you go to your counties and you go back to your towns and you're in your various groups and your churches especially, you've got to speak up. You have to sound off. People come up to me all the time and they tell me, thank you for your service. I'm honored by your service. Thank you. That's very humbling. I feel very good about that. And I love serving in our armed forces. Loved it every day. I wouldn't change it for a minute. But I'm telling you, folks, now, and I try to turn that message around to me. And I say, well, how are you serving today? How are you serving today? So if you don't remember anything I say, I want you to remember that question. And when you're going out there and you're talking and you're in your different places in life, I want you to ask that same question of the people that you're with, or at least think about it. How are you serving our country today? Today. I'm telling you, right? I mean, I use this phrase, local action equals a national impact. There is a leadership counseling thing that I used to do with young people, right? And it was about control. I just said it a little while ago. And it's take control of what you can control, right? Don't worry about the things you cannot control. I mean, there's things that God, sort of God is in control. But you can't control what they're going to do in Washington, D.C. unless you're a member of Congress, right? Or unless you personally know Trump, you can call him up and go, hey, that was a dumb idea, right? You can't do that. Most people can't do that in this country. You're here for a reason. You're here today for a reason. Something compelled you to be here, whether it was to just be curious about people that are talking or curious maybe you're going to get a good deal on something. But our country is in the place that it is in because the American people have not stood up enough. I'm not talking about soldiers in combat. I'm talking about citizens in their communities. And I won't go into too much of this, but the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment, only amendment that we have, because I'm not a legal expert, but I did ask a good lawyer friend of mine that actually works with these guys. I said, just tell me something about the Second Amendment, other than, it's a gun, right? I mean, I own a couple. So it's the only amendment that actually has a certain type of clause. Only one, right? And it's fascinating. It's got a preparatory clause and a militia clause, right? And it's not about making sure that the Army has guns, right? Do you know that in the Constitution, there's only one service in our military? So only one service in our military that's specifically identified in the Constitution, and that's the United States Navy. It's the U.S. Navy. Because at the time, remember, 13 colonies become a country. You know, everybody wanted to go home after the Revolution. It was a militia, essentially. But we needed a Navy because we needed to protect ourselves from the British. So they said in the Constitution, we're going to form a Navy. We're actually going to pay for a Navy. In time of war, we will form, a militia. We will form something to stand up for our country. Because they didn't figure out that in the time of war, we're going to need to go overseas and do things, which we've done too often in this country, okay? So everything that I'm talking about is about what, and what I want you to know is what do you understand about who we are? It's not just about Tennessee. And I was telling the guy that stood up here that's running for governor, earlier, don't ever take it for granted that, that you're red here, right? Or that you're going to get this stuff done. I got involved a bit, and I looked at Kentucky as an example, They got a governor there that's a Democrat, right? And you know what, folks? This is not about Democrats and Republicans. Anybody that really has studied me and knows where I come from, I don't really give a shit about politics or party. What I deeply, deeply care about and was willing to give my life for and spent 5 years of my life in direct combat operations, and I have my son serving, who I served in Afghanistan with at the same time, okay? All this stuff. This is not about the political dimensions in our country. This is about good versus evil. And I'm going to tell you, we can lose this country in, like Ronald Reagan says, in one generation. You know that probably 100 years ago, about 100 years ago, a guy did a study. It was actually 1938. A guy did a study on the rise and fall of nation states around the world, right? I'm a student of world history, and I study this stuff, right? And he looked at all these empires. Athenian Empire, Roman Empire, Ottoman Empire, British Empire, right? All these different empires, Carthaginian Empire. And you know what the average lifespan? So Ottoman Empire, which was Muslim, longest lasting empire in the history of the world. Almost 1,400 years, right? So of all those 7 that were studied, for indicators and warnings and how they were, why did they collapse, right? But the number that stuck with me, was the average length of time that these empires lasted. And you know what that number is? It's 250 years. 250 years. So we're 249 and a half years old right now. I'm telling you, we can lose this country. It's not just Donald Trump. If we are able to be successful in having another 250 years of this country, I have children, I have grandchildren. That's about as far as I can see, right? Which is maybe into the next century, because I can see through my granddaughter's eyes what my mother taught me and what I want her to be, because if she gets to the age of my mom, she'll be alive into the next century. And I hope that she is, and I hope that the country's stronger, better, right? More productive. We're fighting for tooth and nail. Some gentleman up here telling me earlier about the farming here in this state, right? Corn, cattle, chickens. You got all these monopolies that come in. We the people, we live not in a democracy. We live in a republic. We live in a representative form of government. That means that we, the people, are the ones that are supposed to say how it is that we are going to live. The Third Amendment, you know what that's about? What's that about? Anybody want to give it a shout? It's good. It's about not quartering soldiers in your home without consent. The Third Amendment, not quartering, basically not allowing soldiers into your home without consent. Okay? The founders, right? You know that the Third Amendment is the least argued amendment at the U.S. Supreme Court since the founding of this country. It's the least argued. It's like nobody argues about it. And you know why they don't argue about it? Because we got the Second Amendment. You know, believe me, all these countries and all you guys and gals know that have kind of, you hang around this idea, you know what the deal is. You know that there's a Democrat in the U.S. Senate right now, and I know him, I've met him. I could go hugely Irish on you right now, okay, about how I feel about this person. He's a United States Senator. Every time that there is a gun incident somewhere in the country, like just recently happened because he did it again, anytime there's a shooting, he gets up there and he pounds the table, he calls people in, you know, he's all this, he goes in front of the cameras. He's a Democrat, right? He's got the largest shotgun collection in the country. He hangs it on his wall in his home. Because there's ladies in here, I will refrain from what I think he is. But this is a United States Senator who's a big phony, like a lot of these politicians. We don't need phonies. That's why he's like in the presidency for the second time, thank God. Because he's like, you know, what you see is what you get. Don't go in there to the American people and go, yes, I'm going to do all these things. Here's my promise. I'm going to promise this. I'm going to promise that. And then they get in there and you hear them you hear them in some of these meetings and stuff like that. My colleagues over on the other side, they're not your colleagues. Believe me. Those people want to destroy this country. They are anti-Constitution. They're anti-Second Amendment. They're anti a lot of things. They're anti-free speech. If they took away our Second Amendment, so this is why it's like, this is not like we're gonna compromise on this issue or this part of a bill. Don't compromise. Do not compromise. Every time we compromise on something called the Constitution, we will lose because it'll be like another thing another fabric of this beautiful thing we call the United States of America that they're going to pull and they're going to rip apart, okay? So we have massive, massive challenges ahead, folks. It's not going to take one presidency. He's going to do all that he can. When you go and you think about these people that are running for office and you think about elections that are coming up, trust me, your elections, I'll tell you right now, your gubernatorial election will probably be a 30% turnout. I hope, I pray that I'm wrong. 30%. Just telling you. And you look at it, and maybe in Memphis, it'll be higher. Maybe in Jackson, it'll be higher. Maybe in Nashville, it'll be higher. And you know the numbers? If it's higher in those three places, the advantage is not to the Republican. Believe me, the advantage will be to the Democrat because they're smart. They're smart and they're evil. And they exist. And they will get in there and they will do these things. Right? If we don't work together, not as GOP, you got to work together as Tennesseans. The way that we will win this country back, and mark my words, get this. The only way that this country is going to survive another 250 years is if states stand up, and come together, maybe, right? Because the federal government is so bloated and so broken in terms of broken. Not broke in terms of broke like in terms of money, but broken. Trump is doing all that he can. I mean, there's an insurrection going on at Health and Human Services in the last 24 hours. Come on. You know what I'd do? I would change the locks on all the doors. I mean, there's got to be dramatic things that take place. So you guys are here, and I'll get off the stage here because I know you got a lot of other things going on. But you guys and gals are here to achieve something. You're here to achieve something for this state, right? Whatever those things are, constitutional carry, whatever it is. Don't rely on the guys and gals that are doing it. You have got to decide, how can I help? You know, can I use my time to get on the phone to make some calls? Do you need some emails done? Do you need some writing done of letters? You know, do you need somebody to go around and knock on doors? I'm not asking you folks. I'm getting chills talking about it. I'm getting emotional about it. I am pleading. I am going around this country pleading with people, because when we have 30% turnout, one state had 7% turnout for the governor's primary. Okay, for a primary race for governor of a state, 7% turnout on voting day. 7, because it was not on the cycle of a presidential year. I'm pleading with you. Take this message back. Ask the question, how am I serving today? How are you serving today? And drive it home. This idea of local action is powerful. It is powerful. Washington will do what it will do. Trump will do what he can do. But when he signs those executive orders and he stands there and he does this at his desk, right? He signs it, he stands there. It's an executive order. I'm a military guy. I know what an order means. I get an order, I execute. Not the government. Okay? So he signs an executive order. It gets put down to the departments and agencies and activities. You think those people are executing? Hell no. There's an insurrection in one of the biggest departments that we have right now. I mean, so he's got to do things like he's Department of War, right? Because everything that I've talked about during this time that I've been given, and thank you for it, is about what's happening inside the contiguous boundaries of this beautiful country of ours, right? It's what's happening inside. And not enough is happening. Not enough. Because outside, there are wolves inside, but outside there's wolves. And I mean there's wolf packs. There's wolf packs. And they're south of our border, right? They're in Europe. They're in the Asia-Pacific theater of operations. Those are ideologies that compete against us. Xi, the prime minister, the premier of China, of the People's Republic of China, you know what he declared? So they said by 2049, China had their 100-year plan, and basically China was going to be the world, the global superpower this century. So they declared that, right? And they said by 2049 was their plan. Actually, what Xi did is he declared himself basically for a lifetime the leader of China for a lifetime, and he moved the timeline up to 2030. It's only a few years away. So when you're sitting there at home and you're doing the kinds of things you do and do that, live your lives, but understand that we must organize, we must get together, we must have a passion for our country, because there is competition everywhere. And it's even in our own, where we live, that competition exists. You probably got, I don't know, in your state legislature, you probably got Republicans that ain't voting for this stuff. And you do. I know you do. I know you do. Don't let them, don't put up with them. If they're in another county or another district, go help whoever's running against them. Go travel to the next district and run against these sons of guns, okay? All right, everybody, listen. I am so deeply honored to be here. How do I serve? How do you serve? That's the question I want you to answer, all right? God bless y'all and God bless America. Thank you very much.